WebKit and some of the core foundation networking stuff together, and after diving into it and trying to boil it all down, it's enormous, like core data and core audio. So I'm going to give you some resources on where you can start off. There's so much of the foundation relies upon layer upon layer upon layer, and I've got a slide in here demonstrating that a little bit later. So I'm just going to focus on WebKit today, keep it short, so that you guys can also spend more time working on your projects. So WebKit is, according to Apple, provides a core set of web content in Windows by default, and implements very basic core web functionality, and HTML rendering functionality and interaction. One of the reasons that they do this is because so many applications nowadays need content from the web, or use web content, or use content from file servers or FTP servers. They needed some. They decided that it would be a good idea to have a standard way to present and present web content using the tools that already existed, like Interface Builder. So they used they forked off something from KDE and developed WebKit, which is actually it's actually an open source project that's available now. I've also got a link slide on here for that. The way that you use it, I'll demo that in a second. It's really, really simple. It exists in Interface Builder under, if you look in the objects in the lower right, Xcode 4 obviously, and it's a UI web view, and it's all it is just dragged out, and it's a view, and it accepts web content and handles user interaction. And I'll show you that in a second. It's incredibly easy to use. Like I said, it was an open source project. It still is. Here, this is the link where you can check out, and you could actually download builds of WebKit and modify it.
They're about to hit build 10,000. That's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah, there are a lot of people working on this because this is used in a ton of browsers. It's used in Mac Safari. It's also used in Mac Firefox, Mac or Google Chrome uses it, and a couple other smaller browsers, less well-known browsers use it as well. It's become a real standard in an interface for displaying and interacting with web pages in a very simple way. So, how does it work? Like I showed you in Interface Builder, you just drag out a UI web view, and it's one line of code. Seriously, it's this line right here. It's the web view. The object is the web view. Load request. This NSURL request and NSURL with string are wrappers around the URL, NSURL, and some of the other foundation, networking foundation classes. You can dive more into that if you want to know more about, and hopefully you understand what URL, the Uniform Resource Locator, is all about, and that it's a way that you can point to not only local files, but files on a server, files on a web server. So basically, all you're doing is calling load request with this URL, and that's it. That's all you do. Let me show you how simple this is. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to copy this, switch over to Xcode, create a new project. Cocoa Touch. iOS application. We'll make a window-based application. Apple recommends that you don't subclass UI web view. I'll follow their guidelines, but I'm going to kind of hijack the window a little bit just for speed purposes. We'll call this browser. So we start off with the template project, the standard iOS template project. What we're going to do is we're going to first turn screen recording on because I forgot to turn it on earlier. Sorry, Kevin. So let's go to our, we'll just concentrate on the iPhone version for the time being. So we'll go to the iPhone zib. It has a window and a label here. I'm going to dump the label. I'm actually going to create a new file here. This is just to kind of keep it cleaner. You can put this line of code in your app delegate if you want to. It's a little janky if you do that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make a UI window, subclass. We'll call it the browser window, and organize this a little bit here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to hijack the window here in Interface Builder, but for right now we're just going to have the awake from nib make the actual call. So we need the web view for this. So we'll go back here. I'm going to take the window and make this turn this into the browser window. Then I'm going to do is grab a copy of UI web view, drag it out. Let's resize this here. Let's put it in the corners here. Oh, dog. It's going to make me do this manually. Ah. Gotta love limited screen resolution. There we go. I'm just insetting this a little bit so that it's easier to see in relation to the where it's sitting on the iPhone screen. So there's our web view. Let's just make a reference to it. Still trying to get used to that. So this is the template for the request. Here it's expecting a string. It'll wrap up NSURL. Will wrap this up into we'll wrap a string up into a URL that can be used with the URL request. There's more documentation about this online. Essentially, all it's doing is wrapping this up so that Core Foundation can understand the URL that you're passing in here. So all we're going to do is just give it a string literal. Let's go to apple.com. That's it.
You want to synthesize?
Yeah. Well, actually, no. All I'm going to do is connect the So I've got the browser window here. And I'm just going to connect the web view here. So now we've got a reference to it in Interface Builder. Normally you'd wrap this up in a window controller or a view controller. I'm just doing this just for speed right now. So does everybody kind of understand what I did? I just subclass window, took over the window. I've got a web view in it. Here it is. And I'm calling load request with this URL. Build it.
Running for the iPad though.
Yeah.
Thank you. Keep your fingers crossed.
Simulator launches.
There it is. So, like I said, not only is it for rendering web pages, but it also handles full interactivity. It handles all the link selection. We can play back video inside of here if we want to. You basically have a full web browser right there in a view, one line of code, which to me is pretty amazing. Thank you. To me is pretty amazing. So a couple actions that the web view has are backwards, forwards, reload, and stop loading. So what we'll do is we'll make a little room here, and let's grab a UI button. Slap it up here. Let's grab another one. Put it up here. Forward. Back. If we look at the connections that WebView has, we can see that these are the actions that are received IB actions, and so all we'll do is we'll connect the buttons. We're going to use the touch up on the inside, which is pretty standard for making sure that the user has selected the button and has kept the selection down inside that button. So what we'll do is we'll connect that to the UI web view. What's that?
That was touch drag inside.
Thank you. Touch up inside. And to the UI web view. Go back action. Forward. Touch up inside. Go forward. Save. Run. Back, back, forward, forward. It's pretty amazing, actually. So we'll finish this out. We'll round this out. Let's make let's have a place that we can put a URL in. So what we'll do is we'll grab a UI text field. Put it up here. We'll make our window a text field delegate. So that we can override when you've entered text and when you've hit return, so it'll know when you've text. What is it? Text.
It's bool text field.
Okay. Text should return with our text field, and so what we'll do is we'll write a little helper function here. Go to URL, and it's going to take an NS string URL. Snag this. Bring it down here. We'll say self go to URL. Actually, you know what? Let's just put that text right in the text field, and we'll just snag it right out of there to begin with. So what I want to do is let's make a reference to our text field. Go. Title, label, or text. So this is just pulling the text out of the URL text field.
Oh, that was right. It's just when you haven't defined it. It's
The text should return. We're also going to have this say self go to URL. We're going to use the text field that came. We'll just use the text field that came in. It's text. Let's declare this so we don't get. I'll be lazy.
What, don't feel like doing the class continuation?
No, I do not. So standard.
Make sure you go to URL uses the URL also.
Thank you. So kind of standard UI text field, delegate override, and then we'll go to the zib, and we'll connect our text field to our window. Oh, other direction. Text field to our window, and let's see, we pulled the text out, right?
Well, you do need to go to the delegate
Make it the delegate because it is a UI text field delegate. So we set the text field in the interface builder, set the text field's delegate to be our window, and we have a reference from our window to our text field. So we'll put our URL that we want to go to inside the text field. When the window starts up, when it awakes, it'll grab the text out of the text field, call our go-to URL, which will use our web view. And then if we enter any text into the text field, hit return. Let's also make the text field go away. Remind me again, text field should...
No, just in return, you can say self-resigned first responder.
Oh, that's
or
right.
Text field resigned first responder.
Go.
Well, just for fun, why don't you show them how to change what the return button looks like? Because there's a lot of different flavors of the return button on iOS. There's the one that says return, but you can also make it say go or search or quite a few other things. And you can do that in the interface builder. For the keyboard, yes. Is that what I said? Yeah, that's for the keyboard. So if you select the text field and you go to the inspector, then in the identity one, I think one of the properties is return key type. Yeah, return key. So there's a lot of different flavors.
Emergency call. That sounds like fun. Save it.
I think that only works for a numpad. That's what Resign First Responder does.
Which I tossed it there while kind of the last minute. I changed it back, yeah, just in case.
I think the emergency call return button only works if the keyboard is a numpad. And that's the other neat thing about the keyboard is that it's not just a text keyboard. You can also have it be the numpad or the email text field. There's a different keyboard for entering emails that has the @ sign at the bottom, among other things.
So are the websites detecting that browser as iOS browser?
Yeah, the UI web view reports itself as a mobile browser.
How is there any way to get it to scale properly? Like, you want to Google and everything's offset because it's scaled to the exact size of the regular browser?
I mean, UI web view subclasses off of scroll view, I believe, so you should be able to assign a scale value to it. No, I mean, you can programmatically assign the zoom level.
Gotcha.
If you want.
How about scale pages to fit?
Oh, even
sounds
better.
That
sounds nice.
Sounds good to me.
There we go.
Done. actually. Let's go to the full site just so we can see it scale. So that's WebView. Pretty amazing, actually. So very, very high level. You've got your web view, which is made up of subviews. You can set up. There's tons of documentation on this, so this is very hand wavy. But essentially, you can set up separate views, separate web views. They can also be attached to your models into core data, so you can pull in and export data straight from the WebKit. You've also got frame views that you can use, but everything is all modeled in a very orderly hierarchy, which lets you kind of customize the browsing experience if you don't want to have just a full window or a full scaled view, of your content, and you want to actually have some more browsing capability. That's all built in. Under the hood, like I said, it's built on quite a huge foundation. At the lowest level are the BSD sockets. Then all of the core foundation sits right on top of BSD. Core foundation, again, is kind of the C bridge to BSD and to Objective-C or to Cocoa. The CF network sits on top of the sockets. The core foundation is responsible for, at higher and higher levels, it goes up kind of the network stacks, the network layers. The lowest level is responsible for talking to the sockets directly. The higher level is responsible for communicating with the high level API. And then NSURL is one of the NS Foundation services. They've also got net services, browsers, or service browsers, so that you can look for, say, shared iTunes libraries, or look for any other Bonjour enabled applications. It can be found with the NS Net Services browser. There's a ton of functionality here, and then WebKit sits on top of all of that, foundation. So wrapping up, in conclusion, these are the two main starting points if you want to dive into lower level networking with core foundation. All the previous slides were high level using WebKit. This is now if you want to go even deeper and you want to start doing some of your own networking. So this is Apple's recommended iOS networking and internet starting point, the documentation, and then this is the Core Foundation Network Programming Guide, which can start you off on. It has a bunch of different examples and a bunch of different possible paths that you could take for instance, if you want to connect to an FTP service and you want to know how to interact with an FTP server. This is the starting point, the kickoff point for all of that, and that'll be in the slides online, and that's gonna do it. Do you have any questions? It's fun to mess around with. Like I said, you can see the learning curve is very shallow. It's really easy to start messing around with, and it's incredible how much power and functionality that you get with just by having a simple UI web view and some very simple methods that are given to you as an API to start using as a interactive web browser. Cool. Yes.
So would we go to the first link if we wanted to know how to, let's say, download a file off the internet or do HTTP requests?
Yes, exactly. It's got all of that and much more. Yeah, it's really, the documentation is really, really comprehensive. I tried to boil it down and there's no way. Cool.